Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of Unleashing Brilliance. It's wonderful to have you here yet again. Now, today I want to maybe rattle the cage just a little bit and perhaps change your thinking about imposter syndrome, because we're going to dive into something that I know we all feel. I know we all deny, and perhaps we pretend we don't have it. And sometimes we let this very thing rule our world. Yep, it is that old chestnut, imposter syndrome. But here's the thing, I don't want to talk about it in the usual way. You know, that narrative of how to cure imposter syndrome, or let's banish it forever, or I'm going to give you the 3 tricks to beat your inner critic. I don't want to talk about any of that. I actually want to flip the script and say, what if imposter syndrome is actually a gift? What if it is your superpower? What if instead of avoiding it, we actually embraced it and used it as rocket fuel to power ourselves up and to achieve that success that we want to achieve? So this is what I'm talking about today. But before we go into that, let's just talk a little bit about the truth around imposter syndrome, because every single one of us has it. We've all had that moment of standing in a room, you might be at a meeting, giving a presentation, starting a new role, even launching a new product, where our brain goes, you don't belong here. You're not smart enough to do this. Someone's going to find you out. They're going to find out that you're a total fraud. We've all had it, haven't we? And you know what? You're not alone, because that term, imposter syndrome, was first coined back by 2 psychologists in 1978. And it was a term that described high achievers who feel like phonies, that no matter how many achievements or how many accolades they've got, that they feel like a fraud. Sound familiar? I call it itis, the itis. You know, you've probably heard me talk about this before, the not good enough itis, the comparison itis, the lack of self-belief itis, and the big one, procrastination fueled by fear itis. But let's be real, imposter syndrome can absolutely suck. It can paralyze you, but what if we could reframe it? What if imposter syndrome wasn't a sign of inadequacy, but actually a signal that you're actually growing, that you're stretching into the next level of brilliance? Because here's what I've learned over the years of building a corporate career for 20 odd years, and now for the last 14 years, building and selling businesses and constantly reinventing myself. What I've learned over the years for myself and through coaching leaders who are also experiencing it is that imposter syndrome often shows up right before you do something remarkable. It's the signpost that you're expanding. And so instead of seeing imposter syndrome as a red flag, what I want to talk about today is using imposter syndrome when it rears its lovely little head. What about using it as the green light, as the go button, as a nudge from the universe saying, this matters, let's keep going? What if you could achieve that for yourself? Now, a few years ago on this very podcast, I had the joy of interviewing the incredible Sherilyn Shackle. She's the founder and CEO of a company called the Marketing Academy. And on this podcast, I asked her, so Sherilyn, what scares you? And her answer, she turned to me and she went, Mildred scares me. And I went, who the hell is Mildred? And she went, Mildred, it's an orangutan. An orangutan. You see, what Sherilyn had done is she'd given her inner critic a name and a whole personality. Mildred, the voice in her head who tells her, you're not good enough, don't take risks, don't look silly, don't be brave, you're going to look stupid. Mildred is her inner voice, which she has named as Mildred the orangutan. And what Sherilyn does is she laughs. She actually laughed when she told me this story because she knows that Mildred is just trying to keep her safe. Now, we've all got a Mildred, don't we? Every single one of us, that voice that tells us to stay small, to play it safe, to be quiet. But what if we acknowledged it? What if we gave it a big fat hug and thanked it, and then decided to move on anyway? Now, it reminds me of a time a few years ago that I was in San Francisco and I was speaking at the same event as Simon Sinek. Yes, that Simon Sinek. And I can remember sitting in the audience watching him, his amazing delivery of his content, and suddenly my own version of Mildred the orangutan appeared. Only this time, it wasn't an orangutan. My version of this is Freddie, a bright green frog that sits on my left shoulder. And yep, I kid you not, he was there, sitting on my shoulder, whispering in my ear, "Who do you think you are? No one knows you are here. You're just a little kid from Australia. What do you think you're doing being here in San Francisco? You're a small fish in a massive, big American pond. Everyone's come here to see Simon, not you." Honestly, it was like going on and on and on and on repetitively. And I could feel the nerves rising, that overwhelming urge to just run out of the room, disappear, potentially find a corner and vomit in my mouth. The heart was racing. The palms were sweaty. But then I stopped and I took a massive, big, deep breath. And I looked at Freddie, metaphorically, of course, and I said, "Thanks, Freddie, for looking out for me. I get it, but you know what? I'm all good." And I went out there and I nailed that keynote. Because you see, once you realize those voices aren't facts, they're just fear wrapped up in a silly costume, you can actually choose to move on anyway. So let's talk imposter syndrome and how we can use imposter syndrome as a superpower. Because as I've said, we've all got it. The question is, are you going to let it freeze you and get in the way of your goals and dreams? Or are you going to choose to see it as the power-up gift, as the superpower that it really is? And I'm all for the latter. And here's why. So first up, what if we embraced confident humility? Confident humility is this sweet spot between boldness and openness. It's the ability to say, I believe in myself and I know I've got more to learn. Adam Grant talks about this beautifully in his book, Think Again. He defines confident humility as being grounded enough to doubt your tools whilst being bold enough to believe in your capacity to grow. It's about having faith in yourself and your journey. It's having that self-belief, knowing that you're on the right path, even if you're not exactly sure how you're going to navigate the terrain. This is where imposter syndrome, I think, can serve us because it pushes us into reflection, into rethinking, into refining. You know, when you're in that space, when you feel just enough discomfort to question your strategy, but to still have enough courage to pursue it anyway, you're in your zone of transformation. It's exactly where I found myself early in my business. I remember distinctly waking up one morning, my heart was pounding with excitement, self-belief and fear because I was saying to myself, I'm going to become a speaker. I'm going to write a book. And I knew I had this message. I had that self-belief. I knew I had the stories, but the fear was I didn't have the skills yet. And so I did the work. I hired Matt Church to guide me through the speaking world. And I hired Kelly Irvin to help pull that book out of me and to craft it so I could release it into the world. And trust me, it wasn't easy. There were lots and lots of tears. There was writer's blocks. There were awkward first drafts. They were painful. Oh my God, I can remember them. Those painful practice keynotes in front of people. But I showed up again and again. And now I travel the world, I'm paid to speak, and I've published 3 best-selling books, not because I never doubted myself, but because I believed enough to begin. And I was humble enough to get help. That's confident humility. And by the way, these are the people that I love working with in my Elevate and Inner Circle community. These people that have such incredible belief. It's one of the first things I ask when I talk to potential clients. I get a read on their mindset, their belief, their passion, and their purpose, and understanding around how much are they prepared to do the work to learn. It's the confident humility that creates the shift. Now, the second reason I think imposter syndrome is a superpower is if we can tap into this concept of appreciative inquiry. Now, just stay with me for a second because this might sound a little bit academic, but I promise you it's actually really juicy. And most feedback systems, you see, focus on what's broken, on the gaps, on the weaknesses, on that dreaded 360 review that tells you need to fix something. But what I love about appreciative inquiry is it's different. It was developed by a guy called David Cooperrider in the 80s. And it's an approach that actually focuses on what's working, on your strengths, on your wins, on your unique spark. Because when you focus on what's strong, instead of listening to what you think is wrong and that fueling the imposter syndrome, you're able to create momentum from a place of power. And this applies not just to your business or your team, but it also applies to you. Because here's what happens. When we feel like imposters, we hide. We become invisible. We try to cover up those flaws or those jiggly bits of our personalities, the very things that make us unique, that help us stand out, that make us human. You know what I'm talking about. It's that judgmental voice, the impatient tone, the over-talking when you're nervous. But what if those things could actually become your superpowers? Now, here's how I do it. Here's what I teach in my world. And I want you to do it. And if you can, grab a piece of paper now. And if not, just bear with me, work with me on this as you're listening in. So the first thing I want you to do is think about owning the negative. I want you to think about those things, those words where people have criticized you, or that you criticize yourself, or think about, I want you to be really honest with yourself. No filters. I want you to be judgmental, impatient, whatever it is, no filters. What is it that people say about you? I want you to be really not very nice to yourself. So for example, it could be, for me, it could be judgmental, impatient, domineering, over talkative. It's like, ugh. Not very nice things, right? So what are your not very nice things? I want you to own the negative. So write down 2 to 3 negative things. It'll be the things that you remember that someone might have called you in the playground, a boss might have said to you. It's the stuff that you remember more than the good stuff that people have said about you. So for example, judgmental, impatient, domineering, over talkative. Okay, you with me? Awesome. Then step 2, what we're going to do is we're going to flip that narrative. I want you to take each one of those words and write the direct opposite down, the nice version of that word, because this is what we try to become. So for example, judgmental could become accepting. Impatient becomes patient. Domineering becomes passive. Talkative becomes quiet. So do it for yourself. Those negative words that you wrote down, what is the direct opposite? What is the positive of it? I want you to think that through and write those down. So we've got the negative and then we've got the positive. Now, step 3, this is where the magic happens. This is where we've got to find your superpower. This is the gold. What if instead of you trying to become the opposite, that actually is bloody hard, quite frankly, because it's the direct opposite to who you might think you are. So what if instead of becoming the opposite, you actually evolve that trait into its most powerful form? I love this piece. So for example, judgmental becomes discerning. Impatient becomes results driven. Domineering becomes visionary leader. Talkative becomes dynamic communicator. Can you see the shift? You're not fixing yourself. You're finding the brilliance that's buried inside that messiness. This is the rebel magician way. This is where we don't blend in or smooth off our edges. We actually embrace the edge. We channel it. We own it. Give it a go. Because the next time imposter syndrome kicks in and you feel tempted to shrink, to polish, to play small, I want you to pause. And I want you to ask yourself, what is the strength behind this fear? What is the brilliance in my weirdness? Because it's there and it's really powerful. All right. So that's the second reason I think imposter syndrome is a superpower. Now, the third one, this is the one that where we go, imposter syndrome becomes a superpower because it actually powers us up. It's all about energy. It's about harnessing the fire that imposter syndrome can bring. Because if we let it, that burning doubt can either scorch our potential or it can spark momentum. See, here's what I've learned about imposter syndrome. When I've reframed it, it's actually become my ultimate power up button. The truth is, when you feel like an imposter, you've got nothing to lose. You've got absolutely nothing to prove, but you have got everything to gain. And in fact, by doing that with everything to gain and thinking this, I've got nothing to lose, nothing to prove, everything to gain. How liberating is that? How liberating. Because when we're not trying to protect a perfect image, we're free to experiment, to learn, to try new things that we've never, ever done before. We're free to chase new ideas without the pressure of having it all figured out. And I think this mindset is what fuels three critical things. It fuels the working harder. Imposter syndrome lights a fire under us. It says, you better show up, you better deliver. And yes, sometimes that pressure is tough, but if you can channel it from a place of purpose rather than panic, it becomes a powerful drive to prepare better, to go deeper, and to elevate your game. The other way imposter syndrome powers us up is it powers up our work smarter button. Because when you feel like a beginner, you stop assuming and you start asking. You're more open to feedback. You observe more. You innovate because you're not stuck in the way it's always been done. There's no ego, only curiosity. And that's where transformation happens. And the final power up magic here is imposter syndrome, if we use it correctly, can power up our learn faster button. When you feel like an imposter, it means that you don't know everything, which means that you're ready to learn. And that hunger, I think that's where mastery starts. That's the playground of growth. And this is the secret ingredient of so many brilliant humans I work with. They use that feeling of not quite being ready to prepare better. I literally today got off a call with somebody who is jumping up on stage to deliver a brand new keynote. She prepared, she'd rehearsed, she had her slides, but she knew that there was still a mastery needed to it, and we worked through it. How awesome is that? That feeling of not quite being ready to prepare better. They use the whisper of you're not enough to go and find the knowledge, the mentor, the support, the need to rise, to become better. They don't wait until they feel worthy. They act themselves into worthiness. Oh, don't you just love it? So the next time you feel like a fraud, please don't run from it. I want you to run with it. I want you to use it, to channel it. Let it sharpen your focus. It's the very thing that I have done over the 14 years of running my own business. Every single time I felt imposter syndrome kick in, I've channeled it. I've used it to help sharpen my focus. It's forced me to deepen my preparation, to expand my learning. And this is exactly what it can do for you. That's how you unleash. That's how you lead. That's how you become who you already are. If you've enjoyed this episode, please make sure that you leave a message for me. I'd love you to share a review. It helps me get my message out if you do that for me, and I'll be forever grateful. Please also pass it on to any of your friends that you feel would benefit from hearing this message. Maybe you've got business friends, school friends, life friends that are constantly talking about imposter syndrome. Send this to them and show them that imposter syndrome, their imposter syndrome, can actually be their superpower. Until next week, please unlock who you are. Find something that you might be feeling like a bit of an imposter syndrome about. Give these tools a little bit of a go, and I'd love to hear from you. Until next week, keep unleashing your brilliance, and I'll see you next week.